Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Balance Patch Challenge of December. This is round 2, and we are featuring a good match between Anthony Foti and I can't really read that name, Jarod. Jarod B. I'm Jake, and I'm here with Sam Pletcher.
All right. I think we're going to start with Jared's team here, and this will look familiar to anybody who follows the famous Wolf Glick. And he brought this team to regional a couple regionals ago. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it featured the Jan Mega as a very unique pick, a Tailwind user that gets faster with every turn thanks to its speed boost ability, allowing it to set Tailwind after one turn of protecting and be even faster than things like Sneasler and Dragapult. And this was at a time in the metagame when those two Pokemon were very commonly seen together. Not so much anymore, but it appears that Yanmega still has a place in the metagame as a very fast Tailwind user. And here it supports Sneasler of its own, an Archaludon with Stalwart and Power Herb Electroshot, and an Ursaluna normal form with Guts and Earthquake.
And here comes Jarod right now. Just a quick shout. The facade on Incineroar is actually supposed to be fake out. Sorry for that accident there. But a really cool team, obviously, from Wolf, and a very interesting team to still run now. But I think a big standout is the Archaludon, which is run pretty unorthodox with Power Herb and Electroshot Terra Electric. And Thunderbolt giving you like a pseudo Reshiram almost. Or Zekrom, I'm sorry. Or Miraidon. Miraidon's a better example. And as we know, that Pokemon is extremely strong. So being able to set up a powerful electric attack and follow it up with dragon attacks or just keep going for those electric attacks, really, really strong. Overall, just a cool team, and I'm curious to see how Jared's going to pilot it.
Yeah, we saw Archaludon last round, and that was the exact opposite way to run Archaludon. That was a bulky Archaludon supported with screens and misty terrain, and it was and a rain support, and it was centered around just getting off Electroshot boosts, getting off stamina boosts, and sticking on the field for the whole game and being impossible to remove. Instead, we see Jarod running it with that Power Herb, turning into that Pseudo Miraidon with Electroshot, probably max special attack, maybe even be pretty fast to take advantage of the Yanmega's Tailwind. On the other side, we have Anthony, who is running another team that is seen very frequently here in the kind of late Regulation H era with a Scale Shot multi-skill Dragonite, a Sneasler, Life Orb Golden Go, and an Ursaluna Blood Moon with a Soul Fest.
Yeah, so two kind of cool shouts here are the Assault Vest Ursaluna Blood Moon, which has picked up quite a bit in popularity, and it is one of my favorite Pokemon to see on a team if you can fit it. But interestingly, the Dragonite actually dropping Protect for extreme speed, so really leaning into that offense and support role, and not having a Protect while also carrying Multiscale might be it's a tough call to make there because it can't really get around fake outs as easily. So I'm very, very interested to see how Anthony runs this. But overall, strong looking Pokemon, a great follow me mode with some really, really strong sweepers, especially that Golden Go with Nasty Plot and the Ursaluna, which can just fire off tons of damage, and clean things up with Vacuum Wave and Extreme Speed if any missed KOs come up.
Yeah, Ursaluna almost acting as a de facto restricted Pokemon in this format with such a high base stat total, really well-distributed stats, and kind of like you see with the Archaludon, slapping on an Assault Vest to patch up that one stat that's a little bit below average, and all of a sudden you have a Pokemon that's just really solid, really well-rounded, and can take on just about any board state, especially if it has the right support. I will be interested to see, like you pointed out, that Dragonite with no way to keep that multi-scale intact. Multi-scale acts is almost this get-out-of-jail-free card, being able to take one really strong hit and not faint to it because of its damage having effect. But one of the best ways to utilize that is to have Protect in order to kind of throw it around and keep the multi-scale intact until you actually need it to be broken. So we'll see as we go into game one here, what the leads are and how both of these players will choose to attack their matchups.
Yeah, so right off the bat, we have a really strong lead from Anthony here. The Ursaluna Blood Moon with its partner Electabuzz to slow down the pace of things with Electro Web or redirect attacks with Follow Me. And on Jared's side, we have Sneasler and Yanmega, which Yanmega not known for hitting especially hard, but can obviously set the tempo of the game, and definitely bypass some of those potential Electro Webs by just protecting off the bat and then going for Tailwind. While Sneasler is that Pokemon that can hit especially hard, especially with an Ursaluna, or put things to sleep, or poisoned, or what have you with Dire Claw, who knows. And we are going to see a Terra right off the bat on turn 1 here. Going into that Electabuzz, it is going to be the Terra Ghost, so cannot be faked out, cannot be close combated this turn, and it is just going to be able to click Follow Me very freely.
Yeah, you know, the Ursaluna, the one thing that can kind of threaten it on Jared's team is the close combat from that Sneasler. And Jarod identifying that, going for the Dire Claw instead. We'll see if it rolls any of those statuses you mentioned. It does not. And so even though the Tailwind's going to come up, the Ursaluna is totally free to just launch an attack. It looks like Anthony decides to go for the Blood Moon, and it is going to one-shot the Sneasler. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The Sneasler is gone. And that was the biggest threat to the Ursaluna, I think, on Jared's team.
Yeah, so playing around a potential Terra possibly, although it is Terra Poison, so maybe thinking if it switches out, I want to catch anything on the switch there. Tailwind going up for free, and the Dire Claw going into the now Terra Ghost Electabuzz not going to do a ton of damage thanks to the Resist, and if it had rolled Sleep there, wouldn't have activated thanks to the Vital Spirit. So Jarod now in a spot where he has a very, very fast Archaludon on the field, and it's able to get a lot of damage off if it wants to with that Power Up. However, the problem here is that there's still an Ursaluna Blood Moon on the field that is relatively unchecked, able to do super effective damage into this Archaludon, even if it goes for a Terra. So Anthony looking to be in a very, very good spot here, as Electabuzz is probably not going to take a lot of damage.
Yeah, and you know, we see the interactions with Archaludon's ability here. On one hand, Stalwart allows it to ignore the Follow Me from the Electabuzz and go for a Dragon Pulse into the Ursaluna. On the other hand, no Sturdy means that it can just get knocked out in one hit by the Earth Power, and if you're Anthony, you take that damage trade 10 times out of 10, maybe 40% on your Ursaluna for the Archaludon just going down completely, and now all of a sudden Jared's down to his last 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, I don't really see how Jarod could have gotten out of this lead given what he led himself. Ursaluna Blood Moon really just claiming the throne there. And Jarod throwing in the towel there, knowing there's nothing left that can combat the bear. And going to have to go back to the drawing board, just not expecting Anthony to just right out the gates come out swinging with that big old Blood Moon bear.
Yeah, you know, Anthony, I think, recognizing, hey, you can get Tailwind up all you like. You know, my Ursaluna is going to be the slowest thing on the field anyways, and I don't care. As long as I can keep it safe from a close combat from that Sneasler, then, you know, my bear is going to do all the damage it wants to. Mm-hmm. And it turns out Jarod didn't really bring anything that could threaten it. You know, the Yanmega got redirected by the Electabuzz, and even if it could have hit into the Ursaluna, probably still wouldn't have done too much. The Sneasler, of course, being the biggest threat, completely neutered by the Terra Ghost Electabuzz. And then you saw what the Dragon Pulse from the Archaludon did, maybe 35%. So I think it's going to be up to Jarod here to try to figure out a way to take out the Ursaluna early on and really threaten it.
Yeah, I don't see much on his team that can handle it. You know, his strongest Pokemon into it might be his own Ursaluna, but unless it gets that Guts up, not going to do a ton. It can launch Earthquakes to hit Electabuzz super effectively unless it Terras, and you're able to get that spread damage off to avoid the Follow Me. As I mean, last game we saw the Stalwart kind of work to avoid the Follow Me, but Ursaluna Blood Moon with an Assault Vest just not caring about that damage. So it's going to be tough for Jarod, I think, to combat this well-supported Ursaluna, as Anthony just goes right back to it.
Yep, and Jarod switching things up, going to go with the other mode, and it's going to be the Incineroar and Porygon 2, and I would not be surprised if Jared's own Ursaluna is in the back, because this looks like a much more Trick Room-oriented mode, and we actually see maybe a different way that neither of us really called out in terms of threatening the Ursaluna, a possible Terra fighting Terra Blast from the Porygon 2. Anthony, however, deciding that this isn't the best lead for the Ursaluna to be facing down, and withdrawing it in favor of the Incineroar.
Yeah, so I think Jarod put a really, really good pin in here, where he has the Dark type pressure and he has the Fighting type pressure. Had Electabuzz just gone for a Terra Ghost Follow Me, you know, he's playing around with, am I going to get faked out? Am I going to get knocked off? And we do see here that Anthony does go for the Ghost Terra. So Jared's knockoff here that we saw is going to go a very, very long way.
Yeah, you know, a Ghost-type Pokemon with an Eviolite is probably the most inviting knockoff target that you'll ever see. Interestingly here, you're going to see Terra coming out from both sides. This Porygon 2, now a Fighting type, which will be great offensively into the Ursaluna and the Incineroar, but it will get completely shut off by a Follow Me Ghost-type Electabuzz. Jarod, however, reading the taunt well here, deciding to go for 2 attacking moves, Knockoff actually going into the Incineroar as well as the Terra Blast. So this Terra Blast is going to be doing some pretty decent damage.
Yeah, so a knockoff into that slot would have knocked off the Ursaluna Blood Moon's Assault Vest, allowing this to do a lot more damage. Knocking off the safety goggles didn't really do much, but might have just gotten that chip damage that Porygon 2 needed to get the KO here. So Jarod playing this turn 1 a lot better than he did last game, and Anthony kind of taking the bait. Had there been a Follow Me there, I don't think Electabuzz was in danger of going down, although I'm not quite sure. But losing that Eviolite would have been huge if had it gone for a Follow Me. And had that been a KO, you know, that Terra fighting Terra Blast going into Ursaluna is not what Jarod would have wanted.
Yeah, you know, I think Anthony was really focusing there on preventing Trick Room from going up. The Electabuzz clicking the Terra makes it immune to Fake Out, and then it can taunt the Porygon 2, which would prevent Fake Out, or which would prevent Trick Room no matter what. Jarod, however, not taking the bait and just going for a bunch of attacks. Now we see a Follow Me from the Electabuzz and a Scale Shot from the Dragonite, which is going to do decent damage into the Porygon 2. But this Electabuzz is now going to be a target for some hits, and I would imagine a knockoff coming in from this Incineroar, followed by an Ice Beam that was intended for the Dragonite.
Yeah, after a knockoff might be enough to get a KO with, I believe, a special attack boosted Ice Beam, but after that damage, almost definitely not, thanks to the Intimidate from Incineroar on the prior turn, lowering that Incineroar's knockoff damage. As a Freeze comes out on the Electabuzz, you know, it's not going to sleep, it's got that Vital Spirit, but a Freeze you cannot avoid. No one is immune to the cold unless they have Magma Armor.
Yeah, so that Freeze is actually going to go a long way because it means this Electabuzz, as long as it stays frozen, cannot click Follow Me. And now, the other slot on Anthony's side is just free to attack, or is free to be attacked. It looks like Jarod's going to decide to switch out the Porygon 2, probably trying to conserve enough health on it so that it can take down the Ursaluna in the endgame, should that be what the game comes down to. This will also make the taunt wear off so that if the Porygon 2 comes back onto the field, it can set up a Trick Room. Now, out comes the Ursaluna. This means that at the end of the turn, its Flame Orb will activate and set up Guts, but we'll see if it survives with enough health after this big Scale Shot coming in from the Dragonite.
Yeah, so I think an interesting play for Jarod to switch out here. I think a pretty free either Recover or Ice Beam into this Dragonite, especially the fact that, you know your knockoff's going to go first. Unless this Electabuzz thaws, you're going to be able to pick up a KO on that Dragonite. But maybe smartly switching here, saying, okay, I need to get in a position where my Porygon 2 is safer for the later Ursaluna Blood Moon that wants to switch in. But I think another, well, the first showing of why Protect could be so important on Dragonite, had that Electabuzz had a turn to Thaw, or had Jarod gone for a KO into the Electabuzz, would have been able to bring Ursaluna Blood Moon in freely, but instead just taking free damage.
Yeah, now we see the Yanmega coming out, so a very interesting Trick Room Tailwind hybrid mode that Jarod's bringing out, and it could actually pay dividends here. Scale Shot missing, as it is known to do, but the Incineroar had actually already knocked off the Dragonite's loaded dice, which makes Scale Shot a very unreliable move when you add the 90% accuracy onto a move that now could hit 2 or 3 times and really not do a lot of damage at all. Now Jarod's in a pretty commanding position because the Yanmega is on the field, so Tailwind will be able to be set up, and he will likely have the speed advantage. Anthony could match the Tailwinds, in which case we would see some interesting interactions here. But with the Ursaluna and the Porygon 2 in the back, Jarod having the Pokemon advantage is really going to be advantageous in this endgame.
Yeah, so Dragonite threatening Scale Shot could KO the Yanmega here through its Focus Sash, but just setting up a Tailwind very smartly, knowing that at this point you do outspeed the Yanmega thanks to your Scale Shot boost, I believe 2 Scale Shot boosts, allowing it to get off a Tailwind, but the Parting Shot going into the Ursaluna here is going to allow Jarod to bring in either his Porygon 2 or his own Ursaluna. Unfortunately, he no longer has any sort of speed advantage, and I was about to allude to the fact that I don't know how well Jarod's playing this endgame, given that he really needs to navigate to a position where he can offensively threaten Anthony's Pokemon, and just not doing a great job of being able to get his offense onto the field. Right here we see 2 more support-style Pokemon, and in a position where he needs to set up Tailwind or Trick Room, but both Pokemon are threatened by KOs here. Even if Tailwind goes up, there's a Tailwind on the other side of the field, so we'd have to match that. But not only that, I don't believe the Yanmega is fast enough to set up a Tailwind without taking damage.
Yeah, I think the big key here is the Porygon 2, because that is the offensive pressure that Jarod needs to win this game, between the Terra Blast on the Ursaluna and the Ice Beam on the Dragonite. And the biggest key to keeping the Porygon 2 alive is making sure that it does not have to eat a Blood Moon. This Dragonite is pretty weak. It's already taken Intimidates, and the Ursaluna has eaten the Parting Shot, and now the loaded dice is off, so Scale Shot might only hit 2 times. So the key here is switching in this Incineroar into what could possibly be a Blood Moon from the Ursaluna, which would mean that it cannot go for the Blood Moon next turn. And there it is, the Blood Moon only doing 12 damage on the Incineroar, of course enough to knock it out, but now it means it cannot select Blood Moon next turn if this Porygon 2 comes back in, and that would make it so that the Porygon 2 can do significant damage back to it with a Stab Terra Blast.
Yeah, so the question there was, Yanmega, is it faster at +1 than Ursaluna is at +2? The answer was, yes, Yanmega is faster. The question now is, can Yanmega set up a Tailwind in time for the speed to be in a place where Yanmega's safe? I don't even know what words I'm saying anymore. So the Scale Shot actually going into the Porygon 2 here is going to get a good number of hits, considering that loaded dice is not on, hitting as if it had a loaded dice there, as we're likely going to see a Hyper Voice come out from this Ursaluna Blood Moon. It is the Earth Power actually going into the Porygon 2, not doing a lot of damage. And as Dragonite's going to go down here, I'm very curious what is happening right now. I feel like there have been a lot of turns where Anthony could have capitalized on his position to do major damage with Ursaluna, but throwing a Blood Moon out into a switched-in Incineroar, going for an Earth Power there, I feel like Anthony didn't take advantage of a decent board state to try to claw this one back, even though he was at a Pokemon disadvantage. And now we do have a Yanmega on the field that can set Tailwind for the Ursaluna and back, which has already had its Flame Orb activated. And Yanmega is, at this point, plus I don't know how many.
That's the beauty of Speed Boost. If that can stick on the field for long enough, it's not going to matter what the other the field conditions are. Yanmega is going to be the fastest thing. And so now, Jarod has done enough to set himself up for a Tailwind into a Facade into the Ursaluna. But Jarod's Ursaluna is going to protect here, which means it's going to take another turn of Burn Chip and possibly make itself weaker into a Ursaluna's Vacuum Wave that's going to be coming out on the subsequent turn. So even though he dodged the super effective Vacuum Wave on that turn, it's actually going to make this next one more likely to knock it out, especially if it gets like a crit or something like that, to where if he had just attacked the Ursaluna the turn before, a Facade would have done enough damage to where Yanmega could pick it up at the very end. That said, the odds are still tremendously in Jarod's favor. A Facade would do the most damage here, but Headlong Rush will also do a number. Here comes the Vacuum Wave. A crit could make things interesting, but that's not what we get. Bug Buzz plus Headlong Rush should be enough to send us into Game 3.
Yeah. So I do want to take a step back. I think where Anthony not necessarily went wrong, but where things went awry is when there was a Yanmega and a Porygon 2 on the field, and Jarod was threatening both means of setting up Tailwind or setting up Trick Room. And Anthony had to make a call which one is potentially going to go up. Answer was neither. He just went with offensive pressure that he needed to take out Pokemon and win the game. So possibly making the wrong call there. Focusing down the Porygon 2, as I believe Yanmega went for a Protect, or a Detect rather. But had he been able to get some damage out onto that Yanmega, say with Hyper Voice, another Hyper Voice likely would have threatened the KO and would have just been consistent spread damage that could have won that game.
Yeah, I think the macro strategy for Jarod was actually quite effective. He identified that the Electabuzz support was the biggest thing threatening stopping his team from doing the things that it wanted to. If a Terra goes to Electabuzz is out of the way, then a Terra fighting Porygon 2 has fantastic coverage into the rest of his opponent's team, between Ice Beam and a Terra fighting Terra Blast. So forcing the Blood Moon Ursaluna out early with the threat of that Terra, using Knockoff to make the Electabuzz weaker, and eventually doing super effective damage thanks to the Terra, was a good job in the sense of identifying what he needed to clear from the opponent's side of the board and, putting his Porygon 2 in the best position to clean things up. Now, as you mentioned, the end game didn't go as smoothly probably as he would have liked, but he was still able to, do the damage necessary to come away with the win.
Yeah, I think Jarod could have played his Incineroar a lot better. Incineroar a Pokemon that likes to come in and out and set up positions where you take a Pokemon to lowered stats with Parting Shot, you bring in a Pokemon safely, but he was content to just go for a bunch of knockoffs. And had we seen that Parting Shot earlier, I think Jarod could have put himself in a much better position much sooner rather than a good position a lot later. So, rotating out those Pokemon is going to be key to winning this one, and I'd like to see Jarod make that adjustment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think on Anthony's side, we saw how quickly Game 1 went, right? Where the Ursaluna and the Electabuzz just completely rolled Jared's team. And, Jarod, to his credit, made those adjustments in Game 2, but I still think that, Jarod has the matchup advantage here. Jarod has the Pokemon that Anthony has the Pokemon that Jarod has to worry about and respect in that Blood Moon Ursaluna. Instead, we see something completely different. It's going to be Incineroar and a Golden Go against a Porygon 2 and an Archaludon. So this Game 3 is already playing out nothing like the first 2 games that we've seen.
Yeah, so a really cool maybe call-out from Jarod saying, Archaludon was pretty useless, but I think I shut down your Blood Moon strategy to a point where you're not going to lean on it as much this match. And saying, I'm going to bring Archaludon back. If you don't lead Blood Moon, I think this Pokemon can do a lot, and it will do. And leading an Incineroar into a Golden Go is always a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, fake out pressure from both sides, but I think fake out pressure that's an Incineroar on Incineroar violence here.
Yeah, well, interestingly, looks like Jared's lead is the Porygon 2 and the Archaludon, even though it says the Incineroar on the side. The Incineroar is going to be on Anthony's side, and that Incineroar is fearing a Terra Fighting Terra Blast. We'll see if that's coming out from Jarod. There is a Terastallization coming out turn 1, and it's going to be on the Archaludon, trying to turbo boost the Electro Shots and Thunderbolts that it's going to go for. We'll see if it gets faked out by the opposing Incineroar, or if it can actually get this damage off.
Yeah, so my bad there. I was looking at our overlay, but a fake out going into the Porygon 2 here is going to prevent any sort of Trick Room or a potential Terra Fighting Terra Blast that he might have been afraid of going into his Incineroar. But a +1 Terra Electric Electro Shock going into most likely this Golden Go here. Actually going to be no, it is the Golden Go.
It's a critical hit.
One-hit KO with that critical hit. If my mental numbers are right, I don't believe that mattered, but it very well could have.
Yeah, but that Terra was definitely necessary to do the damage that it needed to in order to get the Golden Go off of the field on turn 1. However, now that Ursaluna comes in, and there is no more Terra Fighting Terra Blast that Jarod can go for. This Porygon 2 is locked into being a normal type, and the Archaludon, by virtue of being Terra Electric, is still going to be weak to ground type attacks. So Anthony's Ursaluna is in a fantastic position. Despite losing a Pokemon turn 1, his Ursaluna is now going to be a serious threat to Jared's team. So we see a knockoff come out, remove Porygon 2's Eviolite. There's the Earth Power that just one-shots the Archaludon without Sturdy. And, I think it was a smart move by Anthony to say, okay, you got the lead right, you called me, I'll take my lumps, but, I forced you to commit a resource in this Terra, and now my Ursaluna is going to be a serious threat.
Couldn't have said it better, Sam. I really like that analysis of, yes, I lost a big Pokemon, but I just brought in the Pokemon that has been giving you trouble all set for free. You took out one of my threats, you no longer have that Terra resource, and I have my big threat in your face. Yes, Trick Room went up. Yes, there is the threat of a potential attack from Ursaluna here, but it hasn't gotten its Flame Orb up, and Incineroar can just switch out and bring out the Intimidate later. So if I'm in Anthony's shoes, I'm probably going to want to do some big damage into this Porygon 2 because Guts is not activated yet. And he is going to go for a Terra into that Ursaluna Blood Moon here. With that Terra normal typing is going to do major damage into Porygon 2 if that is its target with the Terra normal Blood Moon, and with its Eviolite knocked off, that's just going to do an enormous amount. As Earthquake comes out, without that Guts boost, not going to be able to KO Electabuzz and recover from Porygon 2 here to try to offset some of that damage. But if that's a Blood Moon, I do not see this Porygon 2 surviving, but let's find out here as the Blood Moon is going to go into the little Duckling, and it is enough for the knockout.
Yeah, I mean, one of the possible disadvantages to running Assault Vest on the Blood Moon Ursaluna is you lose a little bit of that pop from your Blood Moons and your Hyper Voices. But Terra Normal does just enough to offset that, and in addition to getting that Eviolite knocked off on turn 1, it's more than enough to take out that Incineroar. Here we are in the endgame now with Jarod only 2 Pokemon left, neither of which can switch out. There's an Incineroar and there's an Ursaluna. Anthony's Ursaluna cannot protect, but he's got the Incineroar in the back waiting to bring an Intimidate out, and there it goes. So now this Ursaluna is going to be facing 2 Pokemon that are at -1. The Incineroar is not going to do much. Ursaluna has a Guts boost, still going to be doing some decent damage, but we'll see if it's enough to win things in Trick Room here.
Yeah, I think at -1 effectively offsetting that Guts boost. I don't know if the math works out perfectly there. But if an Earthquake here, I wouldn't be shocked if this knocks out Jarod's own Incineroar. So a bit of a risky play here as Electabuzz just goes for a Protect. I mean, it couldn't have done much here. Follow Me wouldn't have done anything. Electro Web doesn't affect Ursaluna. And now Anthony gets to bring his Ursaluna Blood Moon back in. Not necessarily freely because of the damage it's already taken, but now allowing for Anthony to click the Follow Me next to Ursaluna. So I don't think the Earthquake is going to do nearly enough damage without a critical hit on Jarod's Ursaluna, but maybe a Terra Normal Hyper Voice plus a Vacuum Wave would be enough to clean this up if you can Follow Me away that Facade.
Yeah, that was a really interesting choice to go for the Earthquake because it does get around the Follow Me, but it's also going to damage the Incineroar. So Jarod in a very difficult position here where a Follow Me from the Electabuzz would force Ursaluna's big single target attack into the Electabuzz. Instead here, we see the Ursaluna protecting, maybe trying to wait out a turn, scout out to see what's going on.
Oh.
But we see here that Anthony's Ursaluna is slower than Jarod's Incineroar, which means that the Hyper Voice coming out from the Ursaluna Blood Moon is going to knock it out before it can do any damage. And now Jarod's really in trouble because he can't protect. Well, he could protect again and risk, just losing the game on the spot. But that Terra Normal Hyper Voice is going to be really threatening coming out from Anthony's side. And while Jarod can click Earthquake, no longer worrying about hitting his own Incineroar, it's not going to do enough damage to the Blood Moon.
Yeah, not without a critical hit can this one be won, it doesn't look like. And Hyper Voice doesn't even need to come out. We can just see a Blood Moon, as we do not see the critical hit. Anthony playing that really smart, I think Jarod playing that very smart, knowing, okay, if Incineroar is slower than the Blood Moon Ursaluna, I can probably get a KO here with the Flare Blitz. But that not being the case, Anthony's Blood Moon, we learn at the last second being slower than that Incineroar, is able to get the Hyper Voice off and win this set basically all on its own.
Yeah, that Ursaluna Blood Moon was the thorn in Jarod's side right there. And we saw that Terra Normal Blood Moon taking out a Porygon 2, albeit without an Eviolite. It took out an Ursaluna, which is a very bulky Pokemon in its own right. And also kind of seeing some of the spreads on the Wolfie team trying to be set for Tail Room mode, where they can be faster than things in Tailwind and slower than things in Trick Room. But when you have a slow Ursaluna Blood Moon like that, even when you get the field conditions to your liking, sometimes trying to be in that just right spot can be a detriment to your overall team.
Yeah, I think Ursaluna Blood Moon just all by itself had a really, really big stronghold over that team, a chokehold rather, where there was just nothing that could really quickly handle it offensively and nothing defensively that wanted to handle it. Nothing that could really get rid of that around Electabuzz's Follow Me without being a detriment to his own team, as we saw with those Earthquakes, knocking Incineroar into knockout percentage for that Hyper Voice. So I'm not sure if it's exactly a flaw of the team, because again, this was made prior to Ursaluna Blood Moon being very popular. Maybe needing that Sneasler to do the damage and threaten the Electabuzz to go for that Terra Ghost. I think maybe Archaludon should have stayed at home, even though we did see a big knockout on turn 1. That effectively not leading to much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, Ursaluna Blood Moon having the whole battle in a big bear hug, and I think that was enough for Anthony to take it home there. We'll be back for round 3 coming up next from Balance Patch in Allston, Massachusetts.